In this video I just wanted to give a quick run through how I created the metal shaders for the hammer character. I've shader already created here. Basically I use Neil Blevins blended box map techniques, and here's this blended box map. It's one of the scripts from the Soulborn scripts collection, which I hope everybody should have at least one Neil Blevins script. But however, this is the UI, and you can project from 3 sides, 6. I already have the shader created, from that project, so it was created with 6 projections, so I'll just stick with 6. You can get away with 3-sided in most instances. Usually what you do is you create map and modifiers. Your object selected. If you're going to use any sort of sub-D smoothing, like turbo smooth, mesh smooth, you'd usually put that below the modifiers in the stack, because that'll mess up the mapping. But as I said, the map's created here already, but so I'll uncheck that. But if I was going to create the maps, I would I'd paste in, copy and paste, select my file, whichever it's going to be, diffuse or bump or whatever, and paste them in there and create both maps, and whatever slot you have selected in the material editor, it'll show up there, and then you can basically drag it and drop it, copy it into whatever the relevant slot within the material. So I'll just uncheck this and we'll create the map and modifiers. If you watch up here in the stack, that's just a reset X form. Usually, well, you should definitely have your X forms reset, because as it says here, it'll mess up the map. And this one's okay in this particular instance. So there we are, creating the 6. And how this works is, it's basically box mapping. You have projections from 6 sides of a box, and as the name implies, it blends the projection so you don't get unsightly seams. But it doesn't work with obvious patterns. But if you have well, in this case it's perfect, because we're just going to scratched and dented metal, so which you couldn't have, for instance, a checker map or something as obvious, a pattern as obvious as that, because it just won't work basically. But for the likes of this, it's brilliant. Plus, if you have 100 different metal objects, you don't have to worry about UVing them. You just slap this on top of the stack, and it's done for you. So I'll just give you a quick look at basically how the shader. It's just I'm using metal ray, so it's a metal ray arching design. I've just set it up with all properties of metal. In this case, if I was using IOR, I would have usually set that to 25 or thereabouts, a high number for a metal. But in this case, I was using BRDF curve, so I just set that up for some nice reflectivity. And down here you'll see in the bump, this would be an example of one of the maps created with the blender, and this is how it works. Neil has basically set he's set the material up, so once you create that, it's all in mixed maps and mixed with fall offs. Basically what's going on behind all these, the way the map works, the fall off blends in the different planar projections. But I'm kind of rambling, so I'll get back on track and just show you this. In the hammer image, you can see that there's various different shades of metal. So how this was done, once I had all the basic properties set up, and the base material as I liked, I nested it inside a metal ray multi-sub map, and each of these, that's the first one, so it doesn't have the color correct. The rest of them, I just copied down the original, and then every copy, you throw a solid color, multiply. So this is just basically a color grade. It's just a solid color multiplied over my texture, and this it's a lighter color, so it's overlaid, so you basically can get out various different shades with minimal amounts of setup. And then depending on this object here, you know, has it's map 1 basically material ID. So if I drop down to the turbo smooth and add a material modifier, you know, I could change that to whatever number in accordance with whichever particular shader I wanted to have. So you can do this. Neil is another script where you can, if you did have that 100 objects, as I was saying, you know, you can. He has a great script for dropping materials on and whatever it's some sort of parametric kind of. Haven't really used it that much, but you can basically drop any modifier on it, any place in the stack, and then he has another script that, you know, you can randomize what material ID you'd like the objects to have, or you can set them up manually, whatever. But so that's that. I'll just show you that it's a pretty crazy shader tree, as you can see. That's all in one shader tree, but it's, you know, it's always using the same maps. It's not really as complicated as it first seems. But let me see. Yeah, you can obviously, here I've only set up very basically, so it's just metal with a bump. But if you wanted it, you know, you can go in, and he goes into this in really great detail on his texture and shading DVD, which is obviously where I learned to kind of to do this. But this one's pretty basic, but you know, you can throw this inside a blend, and you know, you could blend it with dirt, or the material on top could be, you know, a painted metal. You could blend it with chipped metal, and the only thing is now, obviously, because there's no UVs, you couldn't put you know, custom painted mask maps into the blend. But he has some other great techniques. He goes into using a mix of procedures and textures, and later on then he actually uses these projections. He just fits the projection, and then he will, you know, he'll go into whatever, left view, top view, and he'll print screen it into Photoshop, and basically it'll be, you know, you can paint on then more specific details and use that as your projection, and it'll project perfectly back onto your mesh. But in this case it didn't do that, it was just basic metal. So I'll just bang a quick render. So yeah, sorry, that was just an example. That was an example earlier on of you know, if you had it mixed it in with the dirt. It's just a basic. I just done that earlier on to check it out, but it's pretty straightforward. It's just you know, using the splat mapping thing for the mask, and then just a brown material, really, just to give an example. But basically, I've explained this really, really badly, and you know, I advise getting Neil's DVD. It's really, really, it's terrific. I advise anybody to get it, you know, that's interested in shading, texturing, using his methods, because they're really good. And obviously everybody knows him. Neil's worked on the likes of Wall-E, Pixar. You know, he's just he's a brilliant artist, and yeah, it's a plug for his DVD basically. But there you can see it's you know, it just has a bump. I usually use ray trace reflection, but I don't use any spec stuff. But yeah, so basically there it is. There it does not. Didn't go into a huge amount of trouble to it. This is a very basic. You know, you can get it looking a lot better than this, but you can see how the projections are working there. You know, where it's up around this area, for instance, you can see where it's blended. There's no seams. I just cancelled that because this computer was pretty bad in the recording, and the usual excuses people have for slowdowns in the recording. But yeah, so basically that's just a quick overview. Sorry it was so poorly explained, but I'm not really used to doing these screen captures. Okay, good luck.